Grip socks are great, and now they're even better with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Better fit, moisture wicking, amazing comfort, and all the extra grip you need. Choose from 10 different colors for just $16.99 a pair at puregripsocks.com.
The psychology of picking a new pair of football boots is extremely interesting to me because everyone has their own unique reasoning. Whether it's the look, whether it's the technology, whether it's the fit, the comfort, which of your favorite players happens to wear that same football boot, the price, maybe a combination of all of these things. Everyone has certain things that they look for in a pair of football boots, with the end goal being to get something that is quote unquote the best, and maybe not the best overall, but the best for them. Which is why the most common question that I typically get asked as it relates to picking out a brand new pair of football boots is which ones are the best. And for the longest time, I simply did not have an answer to this question. There's so many great football boots, it depends on what you're looking for, and that statement is still true. But lately, there is one boot in particular that pops in my head every time this question gets asked. And you have to keep in mind, these are not going to appeal to everybody. There's still a huge personal preference aspect to football boots, but as a final product, I think these are just about as good as they can be, and that is the made in Japan Mizuno Morelia 2. Probably the most refined product on the market in terms of build quality, quality of materials, arguably the most comfortable football boots I've ever had on my feet, much lighter than you'd expect them to be. The only downside is the fact that they are $280. Quite expensive, but in the name of achieving perfection, they're arguably worth every penny. And I'll be completely honest in saying that 15-year-old me wouldn't have wanted anything to do with anything that looked even remotely like a pair of Morelia 2. So I relate with a lot of you guys at that age watching this video probably saying the same thing. But being in the unique position of having been able to try just about all the top-end models from all the major brands that have come out over the last 10 or 11 years, I've been in a position to where I'm able to really pick out what makes a football boot good and what makes a football boot bad, where there's room for improvement, where design and technology is actually holding back performance and the quality of the product rather than helping it. And while this is by no means a high-tech pair of football boots, it's one of those products that, again, from a refinement standpoint, I think that's the key word with these, it's really, really difficult to say where they could actually make an improvement. And that's something that you don't see very often, not just in the football boot industry, but with products in general. These are as close to perfect as I think I've ever seen. Which of course begs the question, why? What makes them so perfect? And that's exactly the question that I want to answer in today's video, including how they fit and feel on feet. So if you're interested in learning more, stick around, watch the entire review. And if you are interested in a pair of Morelia 2s for yourself, you can get them below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes by checking out the first link down below. And as always, if you guys enjoy the brutal honesty and the variety on the channel, please don't forget to support this video with a like, and make sure you're subscribed along with hitting that little bell notification so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2022. Let's talk about technology for a second, especially as it relates to football boots, because I think that's something that is very much emphasized by every football boot brand out there, including Mizuno themselves. Maybe not so much with the Morelia 2, but certainly with the Rebula and Morelia Neo lines. And I think with technology, what these brands are trying to push on us as consumers in regards to marketing is how their new technology is pushing the game forward. It's making the game faster. And while the game has definitely gotten faster over the last 30 or 40 years, I don't think that's attributed to the change in equipment. I think that's attributed to training methods and different philosophies in regards to tactics and training and just having better athletes in general. And of course, this is all personal opinion, but I don't think there's very many people that are going to argue that the game has gotten faster because of Nike Mercurials being lighter and faster football boots. If anything, you could argue that the baggy parachute shirts that they used to wear were the thing slowing them down more than their football boots. Now here's where I'm gonna blow your mind a little bit. What if I told you that these two football boots are only a couple grams apart in terms of overall weight? This is marketing at its finest, where we are led to believe that something that looks like this is going to be infinitely lighter than something that looks like this, where if the build quality and the materials used are up to a certain standard, you can achieve a very similar weight range to the lightest football boots out there in a package that is arguably more traditional. So on a scale in real time, both in the same size 9.5 US. We'll start off with the Superfly 8 Elite, their top end model for $275, 7.3 ounces, the equivalent of 207 grams. Change the scale back to ounces, and we'll throw on the Made in Japan Mizuno Morelia 2, and you can see that they weigh in at 7.5 ounces, the equivalent of 213 grams. So for those of you doing the math at home, that is a weight difference of 6 grams in favor of the Superfly. It is still a little bit lighter, but do you truthfully believe that 6 grams of weight is going to make a difference on your feet when running around in a match? It's not. So if modern technology isn't as important or effective as it relates to the performance of modern day football boots, then what is actually important? And when it comes to this Made in Japan Morelia 2, the Made in Japan part, I think, is a big reason why these are as good as they are. I think there's a lot of complaints as it relates to the build quality of modern day football boots. They just don't make them like they used to. And I think Mizuno's Made in Japan product line is what you get when a brand spends the money on the manufacturing process, the artistry of making a pair of football boots, rather than spending the money on endorsement deals and commercials and marketing material in general. Mizuno doesn't do a lot of that. They don't pay a lot of professional players to wear their football boots. The boots are expensive because they put the money into the product itself, and these things are made in much lower volumes than what you're going to find from, say, something like a Nike Mercurial or an Adidas Predator, which is why in these smaller batches the final product comes out being so close to perfect, which also has its benefits as it relates to durability. While these are $280, basically the top price point that you're going to see from the big brands like Nike and Adidas in terms of build quality and how long they're actually going to last, I would bet money that these are going to last any of the current top-end models that Nike, Adidas, Puma, or really any brand for that matter currently has on offer. 3 rivets at the front, 3 rivets at the heel, the way that these shoes are attached to the sole plates, the glues they use. Again, the construction process is so far and beyond what you're going to find from any other manufacturer. It really does come through in the overall durability. When it comes to the materials of the upper, I think a lot of the big brands have definitely spent the money, time, and effort in talking about kangaroo leather or just natural leather football boots in general as being this old school way of building a pair of football boots. And of course, Nike still has the Tiempo series, Adidas has the Copa Sense line, Puma has the King series. They're all still producing football boots with kangaroo leather, but they're certainly not the focal point of their marketing as a brand. And you have to understand that's not just because they truly believe that the way forward is football boots that aren't made from leather, but leather football boots are by far, from a material standpoint, the most expensive in terms of the cost of material. Yes, there's huge money spent on research and development for something like a Flyknit or a PrimeKnit or a lot of these fancy synthetics that these big brands come up with. But when you're talking about the cost of this leather upper versus the cost of a plastic upper on a pair of Mercurials, I can guarantee you that the cost of material here is probably 3, 4, maybe 5 times more than the cost of Nike manufacturing that synthetic material for a pair of Mercs. And again, this is where you get into the cost of the final product, where Mizuno is kind of doing the opposite of the big brand in terms of spending the money on quality materials rather than developing high-tech materials that in some ways can definitely offer a unique feel, characteristics, and actually perform quite well. But at the end of the day, those materials, those synthetics, those knits, those textiles, they're cheaper materials in terms of cost of material versus something like this incredibly high-quality kangaroo leather that makes up the entire upper. And the leather that you get on this Morelia 2 is simply the finest in comparison to any other football boot out there right now. A more traditional stitching pattern for the sake of reinforcement, a really thin nylon liner that doesn't take away from the softness in any way. The thickness of the leather is perfect from a comfort, feel, and certainly a touch standpoint, where they're soft without feeling bulky, and there's strategic design elements as well, like the Mizuno Runbird logo in synthetic through the midfoot on either side. That's not just to have the Mizuno branding on the upper, it's there to reinforce the midfoot. So with the laces tied tight, the boots feel nice and secure. The central lacing system with the standalone tongue, while very traditional, works incredibly well and allows for plenty of adjustability. And from a fit perspective as well as comfort, these are just top notch. While this might have kind of an old school appearance to it, where a lot of people automatically want to compare this to something like a classic Copa Mundial, this has a modern shape. The volume is low. The fit of the boot is super snug right out of the box. And of course, because they're super premium kangaroo leather, they stretch and form to the exact shape of your feet. When broken in, this has more of a customized feel than just about any other football boot on the market right now. And while the responsive characteristics of this football boot aren't going to match something like a Mercurial or an X Speedflow, just because there is softness to this leather, it's not quite as structured. Again, you trade off that little bit of responsiveness for incredible comfort. And I think a lot of people, if they had these on their feet for the first time, they would be shocked at how much more comfortable a pair of football boots can actually feel. Truthfully, these are more comfortable than my everyday walking around shoes. It's that impressive. The boots, of course, feature a low-cut design with an internal plastic heel counter, a super soft microfiber lining material with very minimal padding, all things considered, but the shaping is just right to where the lockdown and comfort, again, is just top-notch. And then the insole is fully removable and truthfully nothing special, but again, pretty decent in terms of having this nice synthetic suede lining material on the surface and being made from a single layer of this relatively thin black foam. Which brings us to the base of the boots, which is the one area where you could argue there is room for improvement. And if you're just after something that is a little bit more aggressive in terms of design, Mizuno did release 2 colorways of the Morelia DNA, which was actually a limited edition release that featured the upper of the Morelia 2 paired up with the sole plate and stud pattern of the Morelia Neo 3 Beta. Just an incredible pair of football boots, but unfortunately, because of their limited quantities, not exactly readily available. Nonetheless, what you are getting on the Morelia 2, the inline model, is a sole plate that might look very old school, but it utilizes modern plastics, which actually makes this as light as some speed boots out there, which you guys will see in just a second on the scale. Also really nice in terms of its overall flexibility. It works well with the upper and feels nice and solid underfoot. And then as far as the FG stud pattern is concerned, again, not as aggressive as what you're gonna find from a lot of the more modern stuff in terms of the studs being, I would say, about the same length, maybe a touch shorter, but much larger in terms of profile. All conical studs, of course, and really it's that base of the stud that's digging into the ground that's just a lot larger than what you're gonna find from most football boots these days, meaning that they're not gonna bite quite as hard. You definitely have more freedom to twist and pivot. The stud pressure is much more evenly distributed with a stud pattern like this, and they certainly feel very, very stable. But if you're looking for that really aggressive bite, that dig into the ground, you're not necessarily getting it from this. But again, does that translate to worse performance compared to something like a Mercurial stud pattern? No, I would argue it's more so a different feel. If you're fast in a pair of Mercurials, you're gonna be fast in a pair of these. Now, when you're talking about the comfort of a pair of football boots, I think there's 2 schools of thought. One being they are comfortable because they don't give me blisters, and 2 being they are comfortable because I don't feel them on my feet. They disappear, and that is really how you can describe the Morelia 2. Not only do they not give you blisters, you just completely forget that you're wearing football boots at all. The feel of this upper is incredible. The leather is so soft, it moves perfectly with your foot. There is no restriction to your toes bending, to your foot flexing, to anything. And with that nice deep lacing system, it gives you so much adjustability. The boots just feel like they wrap your feet perfectly and move with your feet as your feet are moving. I think that's something that's really underrated about leather football boots in general, is just the way that they move with your feet. There is literally no restriction at all. And again, with the laces tied tight, despite leather not being the most structurally sound material compared to some of these more raw, plasticky, I would say rigid synthetics, these still feel really locked in, secure, and responsive, especially through the heel. As far as width is concerned, they have plenty of width to them. And again, given that they are leather, if they need to stretch, they will stretch a little bit as you wear them in, but won't overstretch, again, due to the quality of the construction and the materials used. So they are going to be suitable for most foot types, including if you have wide feet. And as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you're looking to get a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So to conclude this review, I'm not here to tell you that you should throw out your current pair of boots and go and buy a pair of Morelia 2s. That is definitely not going to be the best option for everybody. In fact, it's not going to be the best option for most people. If what I've described as it relates to the Morelia 2 sounds good to you, then I think by all means this is by far your very best option in terms of what's out there in the football boot market right now. They're worth every penny, again, just due to the refinement and quality of the final product. But what I hope I did more so in this video is point out things that we've been led to believe from big brands that may or may not actually be true and may or may not actually relate to improved performance. Something to think about when picking out a brand new pair of football boots. Not everything is as it seems.